Oh my gosh, I think I might be back online. Holy crap, what happened there? I think we got like attacked or something. I'm going to join this call again and see if this works.
社交距离，然后大家还要洗手，就这些都是相辅相成的。Hi, Dr. Kui.
I have no idea what happened.
Oh, that's okay. We're happy you come back.
Yes, we can continue our discussion now.
Yes, that would be great if you don't mind.
We were just introducing you in Chinese to our audience just now.
Oh, nice.
People are very curious about you. So let's finish the topic just now, right?
Yes.
Yes.
When you get lost, I think I was talking to.
Don't break up again.
I saw you frozen. We're talking about the transmission at that time.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. So according to China military that academy, they try their second standard of the bioweapon is it can be highly contagious. That is ideal, and especially it can be aerosol transmission. So that will be very helpful. Okay, now we know more than that, right? Highly contagious through contact, through aerosol, and even go through the conjunctiva in the eyes if you didn't wear the goggle. And the third thing, what they mean is environmental resistance. And also easy to target people, transmit and also target people. So if it's environment resistant, we can say during summer, during wet season, dry season. Also, compare the coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2, on different types of the surface of the object. You can say it lasts very long, although the viral mode may decrease, but still somehow it is quite resistant to different environments. And also it's easy to target people when they carry it. You see a lot of asymptomatic or mild symptom patients, they carry it, they themselves have the contagious, but they don't know, and people around them don't know who are vulnerable, who get infected. So all of these three characters fit very well. And besides, you can say, although this is not high lethal virus, but we see when like back to February, March, February in Wuhan, March in Italy, and later in US. When we say people has no prevention or no precaution about this virus, when the medical system overload, what we see is many people, they died of different problems, may not only directly caused by this virus, but it do the result followed by the pandemic, right? Like we can say back to February in China, although government tried to hide this information, suppress the people who want to speak out, we already know that when there are a lot of people rush to the hospital to get treated of COVID-19, the whole city lockdown, government don't allow people to go out because hospital overload, the system overload. But even pregnant lady who want to deliver baby, or the senior people who suddenly get in coma at home, or even the kid choked by food, they cannot leave their home. They cannot find a doctor. No one goes to them. These lives are cost. These are the people who are sacrificed innocently in this outbreak. It's like in the war. People may not directly killed by the weapon, but they are killed by the formal disasters. So based on this, I told people this is unrestricted bioweapon. It's not the traditional one. Just see the outcome. Don't just focus on the word. Playing on word is useless. We are scientists. We always see the nature of the problem, right?
Yes, I agree. I want to clarify now for my listeners exactly what you're saying here. So in terms of thinking about this as a biological weapon, what Dr. Yan is trying to explain is that it's not necessarily the best idea from the perspective of the communist government, and I would guess other governments as well, when thinking about biological weapons, that you have to consider the impact of the virus. And something like Ebola is not suited to be a weapon because of the nature of the way that it kills and the nature of the way that it spreads. And a virus which would spread very rapidly and cause a overload in the hospital systems might be as damaging or more damaging than simply a deadly virus. And the more, let's say, varied presentation of disease you could create, the better, because it would be harder to explain and it would be more taxing on your healthcare as well. One of the two things that I'd like to ask you about this idea in terms of the molecular biology of this virus. Is there any evidence? Let me preface this by saying it has occurred to some of the investigators that I'm working with that one of the signs of manipulation in this virus might be its stability. And because it is more stable than the average coronavirus, can you concur with that idea that this is a more stable virus and that somehow also could be advantageous from a weapons perspective, or you don't see any evidence for it being more stable?
What I can tell you is I have been working on animal model for years in the virology lab for the vaccine development and also remedy like immunology study. And also I was a doctor in China. I'm the MD. So these are the things actually it's not difficult for people to understand. I can tell you that these characters really stable because if you want to tell it, maybe there is a chance it become weakened after passages, and then later on the virus can become even disappeared like the virus we met before, right? People have this idea, but you have to understand that is based on the theory that the virus, novel virus, comes from nature. So it owns the nature characters, right? So natural character is what is with human after thousands of years. We are not distinct. We are not extincted, right?
Yes, we have not gone extinct. Indeed, I agree.
Yeah, so we have our immune system, and the virus is another creature. They have their way try to survive. So once this is a very interesting thing that once the two types of the organism, the virus and also human body meet each other, or not human, maybe the host animals, right? When they meet each other, virus try to stay based on your system. And the host and human, they try to defend themselves. So there is always defense. And during the defense, why still the animals and the humans survive, and why some virus can pass after a long time like influenza? Because they get adapted to each other. So once didn't get adapted to each other, no matter it's animal or it's a pathogen, they dead, right? So during this time, this SARS-CoV-2 virus actually is not like going through this kind of process in our human population. It is already pre-adopted in the lab. So how they have done it is clearly, as I mentioned in the paper, that in my report, it is going through the animal experiment. It's not difficult one. We already have listed a lot of evidence based on their studies. They have done that. They know it can be. They know how it works, right? And it's easy. Just give the human, for example, the very simple model is human ACE2 mouse, transgenic mouse.
Mm-hmm.
So you recruit this human ACE2 receptor, and also you give them the serial passage of the pre-SARS-CoV-2 virus when you are doing the experiment. They are always, after a bunch, like maybe 3 to 6 months, you will harvest the higher titer one, which means the virus grew well, like the human ACE2 well, bound it well, and kill the mouse more. And then again, you passage it. just after this passage, it's a scientific process they have done. Like I have done it in influenza lab, and I just successfully after 1 month, I go it from the human H3N2 virus successfully becomes a lethal mouse one. So this is very simple process. Just do it according to the protocol and use your brain and do it in a smart way. It is very efficient. So after this kind of process, first it mimics the nature evolution. There will generate some random mutant during this process, which also can hide the artificial evidence left in the genome, hide some, not all, in the genome of the SARS-CoV-2. And also it's clearly selected the virus is like after competition. The virus candidate, the successful strain is the one who can bind to human ACE2 very well, and also because it bound to human ACE2 receptor very well, it also owns another character at the same time that the transmissibility increase. Although you may not measure it among the mouse because the mink or the ferret, we know is a good transmissional model, as you learn in Netherlands, right? Mouse is never the good transmissibility model, but mouse can show you that whether this is a good strain to attack human. And it's like, because this is human ACE2 oriented adaptation. So that's why when they get this final strain, as we said, maybe you can call, maybe they have 10 candidates with slight different mutant at the same time. We always do multiple strains at the same time. But let's just back talk to the SARS-CoV-2 strain they first isolated in Wuhan, right? We know that is the one on the high transmissibility and also high affinity to human ACE2 and also other receptor, maybe they designed in the other way. So that is, for example, you can image it's an axis. So the axis, one side is very weak, no transmissibility, not like human at all. The other side is toward human, like human best, adaptation and also highly transmissibility. So this one is already pushed to the human field that direction very much. And of course, after they get this strain, they have to test whether it's stable or not. So there may be a slight change when they put this strain back to human population, because still with human, our system is different as a mouse. But that's why you said, although many scientists initially expect this virus can be weakened, but it seems just change around the whether become higher contagious or less lethal. Like just these two factors is almost fixed to some point, and there is a shift based on the original facility and also transmissibility, but still it won't go to a large range because this strain with the character already fixed somewhere in a short range around these two factors. That's why I tell people that, so you can understand it very well, because I think you have this kind of knowledge. You will understand this is, if you just remove the nature origin thinking, it's not difficult for you to understand, right?
Yep.
So
and I think let me just summarize what you said over the last 5 minutes again, because I want to make sure that I got it right as well and make sure everybody hears it. But what Dr. Yan is explaining is that, again, animal passage is something that has been dismissed often as a technique that could be used, but actually what Dr. Yan's paper has shown and demonstrates is the possibility that it's not only that passage could be used to create a virus with certain characteristics, like you saw in the Netherlands, where they passed avian flu and made it airborne. That's one kind of selection process. That's great. But what Dr. Yan is trying to accentuate or try to emphasize is that you can also use this passage after you've found this interesting virus. And you can try to tweak this virus in a number of different ways and then still use the passage in a host animal to then get the virus to replicate and naturally mutate in a way that will disguise many of the mutations and things that you might have introduced. And so not only can you use animal passage as a way to sort of use evolution to discover new properties in a virus or to evoke and select for, and that's what she was trying to describe with the axis, right? If you have enough mice that are expressing human ACE2 receptor and you passage these viruses through these mouse colonies and just with careful selection continue to select for the viruses that have the attributes you want, at some point you will have a starting point that is far removed from what a natural coronavirus would be. And this is the semantic game that is being played on the mainstream media in America now, that natural viruses can exhibit the same properties that we are seeing in SARS-CoV-2. And Dr. Yan's papers are making a scientific argument that it is very difficult to imagine a natural process that leads to a virus with the attributes that we have here, especially with regards to the convenient level of transmissibility and extremely high affinity for the ACE2 receptor, which couldn't have evolved naturally just by the natural processes that we understand viruses emerge from nature. So I think you said it really well, but there's a little bit of an echo on your audio, so I just wanted to repeat it again.
Yeah, please. Thank you very much. And one more thing I want to emphasize is that's also the reason I never recommend herd immunity to people. From the beginning, I tell people in Chinese and later in English that people have to protect themselves. Although you get infected, of course, there are ways you can get treated. But it's better not to get it, not to get infected. Because the herd immunity is based on this is a natural virus. And your own immune system can overcome it. At least at most time, right? Because this is a natural defense process, as I mentioned. But this virus is like it's a bioweapon. It's like gives a knife to stab you. And who would like to get such hurt? And also, there is no way to guarantee you will have immunity, because from the data I have from the hospital in China, the very good quality data, I checked the quality, and that means they show us that for the mild case people, we just beside the asymptomatic people, for 20% of the mild cases people who are admitted in the hospital, they even never have the IgM antibody. So when you suffer this one, it cannot guarantee you always have the antibody, and also you don't know how long the antibody lasts. And another thing is, at that time, our study shows some IgM last longer than usual, last longer than like influenza virus can last. Although when I tried to do more investigation at that time, even back to March, my study got canceled because WHO expert, Professor Manik Paris, Chinese top expert in COVID-19, the direct like the Dr. Fauci in US, Dr. Zhong Nanshan in China, they cancel such study. And China government don't allow people to do antibody studies. And all the data held by the government. So when they want you to do it, that also means they can influence your data. Do you understand the reason?
Yes.
Right.
Can you explain to me briefly explain to me the significance of what would be the significance of extended IgM levels? I think you just said that the antibody levels IgM were lasting longer.
This is always not a very, you cannot say all the pathogens are the same, but generally we can say IgM is an early indicator of the antibody, right? Later, usually it's like for influenza, I can tell you it goes after 7 to 14 days when you get infected, and goes up like after 21 to 28 days, it goes down, and later it will be IgG, including the neutralizing antibodies stay in your body, right? And neutralizing antibody is always the thing we want when we study many types of vaccine like influenza. But the two topics are different in the coronavirus. First, there are some studies, some data in China at that time show that the IgM can last for longer, even like for months. So that makes those experts feel suspicious whether this virus can last like the chronic things, like hepatitis B virus. There may be a chance. We don't know now because why? You know, this virus not just stay in the upper respiratory system, tract. It goes to the bottom of the lung. And when we do the check, most of the time we just get swab from your throat and your nose, right? So it's not easy to see whether there is a very low level of the virus will stay in the bottom of the lung or in different type of the part of the body, right? This is something we cannot say definitely it is, but we definitely need more investigation to study it. Because we now also say that some people get recovered because they get negative after the PCR checking, after recovery, but still again, their disease recurrence. They don't know whether it's reinfection or not. So these are the things we are worried about. Because when the viral load is very low, and also it's in some place that in your body, some part is not easy to reach to do the PCR test. So you really don't know what will happen. And the other thing is we are talking about the neutralizing antibody and the IgG. These are the things we always like to see in the influenza vaccine, but it's not the thing we are really happy to see as a golden standard in SARS-CoV-2 vaccine. Because SARS-CoV-2, when you understand the whole character of it, you know, it's basically the big size of SARS-1 virus plus other lethal function part, right? To make it more difficult to understand and make it more aggressive to human. And back to SARS-1. SARS-1, we don't have the vaccine. The only government who claims they have clinical trial is Chinese Communist Party. Their bioweapon general Wei Chen claims that they have done the clinical trial 1 in human, and they said it's very good, but later because of lack of SARS, so they stop it. No, that is lie. The reason is there are a lot of obstacles, including that the antibody-dependent enhancement and also the unknown energy come out of the SARS-1 vaccines, and also other things, other problem obstacles that you cannot conduct more trials. So go to SARS-CoV-2 vaccine. If you want just a neutralizing antibody, you see all the vaccines they are using equipped S protein, right? The different ways they equip S protein and try compared to inactive, the whole virus, they may use just different techniques to give you this part and to stimulate your antibody. Of course, when you give this kind of S protein to people, and most probably they will get good neutralizing antibody titer. But the thing is, whether they know there is antibody dependent enhancement or not. Because when you have this problem, this IgG antibody, this neutralizing antibody, will generate a side effect. This is a potential risk. And also, back to the data. How many IgG data you have checked for the patient? How long do you know these antibodies can last? We know that we give the mono antibody or something, this is target the virus, it can help. But when you just talk about the antibody generated by vaccine from the S protein, how long? What is the titer? And how is the memory? You see, all the vaccine now, they just give people like twice the 2 doses. They even don't know which dose is better. Sometimes from the second dose is less is better. Then why don't you know maybe only 1 dose is better? Only 1 dose may be better than 2 doses, right? You don't know. And the other thing is they just check people's neutralizing antibody. They don't tell you the other information. They selectively announce neutralizing antibody is good within 1 to 2 months after the second dose. That's definitely the good time for them to show this data, because from the data we see, like the people who generate IgG, usually it lasts over 1 month, 2 months, or even to 3 months. And then later, it goes down. How long will it last? And how it can protect people? So you never know. This comes from vaccine, also comes from the herd immunity. When the government, when the expert try to tell people the herd immunity or the vaccine immunity will help you, they should first solve this problem, use the data to tell people whether this immunity is solid and whether it's all the benefit for you.
Yep, and I think this is a debate that is really starting to heat up right now, and it's a very appreciated point that you make. Antibody-dependent enhancement, for those of you who aren't familiar, is a not very well understood phenomenon whereby your antibodies produced for a particular antigen, the epitope, for example, that the spike protein is most famous for is for its high affinity for the ACE2 receptor. So what you have to imagine is that if the body makes an antibody for that high affinity ACE2 receptor binding domain motif, there is a possibility that the binding domain of the binding portion of the antibody will also have a high affinity for ACE2, for example. And if that were to occur, then the production of those antibodies would have many side effects that wouldn't involve removal of the virus, but could involve stimulation of ACE2 receptor or reduction of ACE2 receptors in circulation. Unknown side effects, let's say it like this. And so because this virus presents this very unique spike protein with an incredibly high affinity for ACE2, there are many potential unknown side effects that have been seen in other infectious diseases and in other incidences of vaccination, where exposure to the virus after you have been sensitized to it, your antibodies don't necessarily need to help you. They can also help the virus in rare cases. And what Dr. Yan is making the point of is that we have seen this in the past when we've tried to vaccinate for SARS, the original virus. We've seen it with other things like dengue fever. And so it's not a phenomenon that we wouldn't expect. It's rather a phenomenon that we should be expecting. And it's one that we're completely not talking about right now. And that's what her point is, that they need to acknowledge this as a real possibility and acknowledge that and show that they're working on it and looking for it. And I think right now, Dr. Yan's main point is that they haven't mentioned this at all. The data is very selective, it's very positive, and it's very contained. The information that they are releasing is very contained and controlled. And it shouldn't be that way if they're planning on vaccinating 1 billion of us against a what could be a coronavirus engineered to be different. And if that's the case, then we would have also antibody responses that would be outside of the natural palette of antibody responses. This is the worst case scenario, but again, I think this is what Dr. Yan wants us to consider, is that the worst case scenario is much worse than the TV is telling us.
Yes, and also you see some reinfection report already show that when they reinfect the mutant virus, there can be virus response. Some may be mild, maybe because the antibody is still not in her body and work. Maybe the mutant is not that different with the previous one. But some do show the worst response. So I didn't mean that it's definitely caused by ADE or something. I mean, we have to notice this, and it worth a lot of investigation because this virus is circulating around us. Every one of us takes the risk when we go out every day, even when we stay at home every day, right? So we have to understand it. And before that, we should not just take the risk together, herd immunity or depend on the immunity. We have to think how to protect ourselves, like using the hydroxychloroquine at this moment.
And have you also seen these recent reports of ivermectin being also quite effective? There's a couple other. Ivermectin is one, and everybody is also singing songs about zinc as well. Zinc being a cofactor for hydrochloroquine apparently, and also a cofactor for many of the antiviral enzymes that prevent translation of the RNA and identify viral RNA in our cells. So I've made this point before that they're not really discussing nutrition and health, and they're only talking about masks and lockdown. And I know that this is much more political than I want to get, but I think this speaks to your point that if we were approaching this virus as we should be approaching it, then we would behave very differently and give very different advice, and that's sort of part and parcel for the show that we're experiencing. So my question is this, and are you as disappointed with America's response as most Americans are, or how do you see, because part of it for me is there is an increased vulnerability of the American population because we are incredibly unhealthy on average. We're overweight, we're diabetic, we don't exercise, we eat very bad food. And so I think there is also some contribution of this to our experience with COVID-19 in America. Would you agree with that, or do they talk about that at all in China as being part of this, part of the equation? I mean,
so what I want to tell is first, there is no disappointment or not, because I never thought about it. From the early beginning when I was in Hong Kong, I know that the day I delivered the message out to Ludo, no matter whether he played it or not, maybe just because I text him that message, I may be already under surveillance of the government, and they can make me disappear at any moment. So this is a real scare at that time, although now I gave it up. But for me, I didn't expect anything. So what I think is, based on the evidence I know, based on my knowledge, and based on my responsibility as doctor and scientist, more people know it earlier as possible. That is the thing I want. So since I already delivered the message out, and after that I keep working with Ludo for 3 months, and our Chinese people, I can tell you, before April, millions of our Chinese audience already know, very familiar with antibody-dependent enhancement and asymptomatic hydroxychloroquine, all these terms. And they know definitely come from lab. And later I came to US to tell people. The more things I tell people, the better I feel. And that's why I just publish the paper without peer review, because I told you I don't trust the scientific word, and you can say the things now verified by yourself. I just put the fact out, put the evidence. Everyone, we don't need those experts to examine, give their idea. Their idea is clear, is that it comes from nature. China government did it very well. You don't need to wear mask, it's not airborne. But people like you, I mean, you have the scientific background, and you have enthusiasm to look into the fact. You can read it by yourself, although maybe some point it's a little bit confused, but of course, this report combines the knowledge from different fields like biology structure, biochemical things, and also molecular, animal medicine, and also clinical things. All those things combined, it's very difficult for one person to understand it, especially he's not the one working in biology field. But the thing is, when the facts come out, more and more people will verify by themselves. And even though I'm not exist, I don't exist, the fact is still there, right? People will understand it. So I don't feel disappointed. And also, actually, I feel more and more people realize it. And people like you stand out, tell the people in your way to your audience. And that makes it spread faster and faster. Although we see the mainstream media like CNN, New York Journal, New York Times, and National Geographic, and even BBC, VOA, I mean, these people influenced by Chinese Communist Party and their colleagues behind for reputation, for money, for all the things they want, kill my voice. But doesn't matter, still can come out. So this is the first thing. The second thing is you mentioned about the underlying health conditions for the people in US. I mean, everyone has their underlying health condition problem. Everyone also they may look health, but they may have different genetic problem, or maybe you can say it like this is fat, or that is some diabetes, maybe something you didn't realize. Everyone actually is vulnerable in front of this bioweapon, because we all have human ACE2 receptor, right? And we see what happened. There is another thing worthy more study, which I was very worried even from the January. That is human ACE2 receptor is all over our different organs and also even endocellular cells in the vessels, right? So that means one organ is not a target, the other one may be. So we should know that there are many cases shows they can test the virus from the stools of patient, but the patient is not that symptomatic. So that I also told you that indicates that there is a possibility the digestive tract, those tropism of the cells, the tissue characters, is not that suitable for the virus. But it doesn't mean it's not vulnerable. Right? The people should, the scientists should focus on these different things that study the difference. Why it stay in the lung better than in the kidney? Why it stay in the kidney better than in the stomach? And from this difference, we may see the key points that how to help to solve this problem. So, everyone, because as I said, maybe this is kidney disease people, patients, maybe that is diabetic people, but since we all have our vessels, right? So we're all the target. No matter it's US people or Chinese people. I do believe there is no like the human species genetic character difference combined into this SARS-CoV-2 virus.
Although, that's a nice thing to hear. I was going to ask you that actually for you to say that. So that's nice.
That is the thing. You may say Chinese Communist Party, the military, they try to recruit too. But according to my knowledge and according to the thing I examined the virus from until now, that I can tell you I didn't see the character successfully combined into this virus. There may be the statistic difference between human species, but even for glaucoma in our eyes, there are different distribution in Asian people compared to Latino people. So that means this virus come out. It may itself can influence different populations because of our genetic difference. But it doesn't mean it's purposely recruited into this virus because according to the technique at this moment, I can say 99.9% is impossible, and especially under the technique in Chinese Communist Party.
Okay. So in case that I make that very clear, and then I have a good question about that, what Dr. Yan is stating there is that although she is quite convinced that this virus was generated in a laboratory and maybe even generated under the pretense of being a weapon, it doesn't have built into it any kind of genetic background selectivity in terms of hitting a particular ethnicity or hitting a particular genetic background in humans. And the reason why is because its infectivity is based on its affinity to ACE2, and the differences between ACE2 receptors across the human population is relatively minuscule and doesn't contribute to some differential manifestation and in terms of targeting of this virus. And that has been implied in other sources and in other places that this is somehow a genetically targeted virus. And so I was planning on asking you about that, but let me follow up on that. Isn't it possible, though, that because these viruses, the catalog of viruses from which this is drawn, originate mostly on the Asian continent, then people who live on the Asian continent will have some innate immunity based on the fact that their background coronaviruses are their home team, right? And our home team of coronaviruses in North America would, by definition, be a little different. And so if you lived your whole life in Asia, you might have, on a population level, you might have a better innate immunity against this general family of viruses, even if this is a no, you don't think so?
Actually, yeah, because we do have face to the our population need to face to the coronavirus before that human coronavirus. But if you check the classification, it is belong to the coronavirus A coronavirus. It is like we call this common cold, and also
the alpha coronaviruses. You mean yes?
Yeah, and also when we talk about this type of coronavirus, it's most probably from SARS time, SARS-1, and MERS, and SARS-2. And these ones never circulating among the population, no matter maybe the Chinese Communist Party try to, and also their friends try to assure you to believe that, but trust me, that doesn't happen because they are always the high contagious one. And like MERS, still people don't understand why the contagious compared to SARS-1 and SARS-2 is weaker. So like this, we don't see this kind of circulation in especially Chinese people's immunity or something. We never see that. Once SARS happened, people died. And again, SARS-2 happened, more people died. The reason you thought we can resist to it is because our government hides the death toll. There are millions, maybe people dead in China. We don't know the real death toll because government never tell you the truth. But what I know is from the data I know from China, they have thousands of ways to change the course of death to cover the real data. Like these people died after he got diagnosed of COVID-19. But the government may try to use the breast ventilation to suspend his life until they use their inaccurate test to get twice negative from his throat. Do you understand? There may be still the virus, but the inaccurate test show twice, okay, this is negative. Then they can remove the ventilator, tell you this guy died of some respiratory disease, but he has no COVID-19. And also, there are more people that don't get diagnosed in China. As I said, especially during the lockdown time, basically, Chinese people are sacrificed. In this pandemic, Chinese people are very pity. They are innocent. Most of them are brainwashed. They even cannot believe, like US people cannot believe the government will do such things to them. But also, I want to emphasize this kind of truth is not only based in scientific fact. What I present in the report is because China government, the WHO, the scientific world always said, we need to talk about science. Let's talk about science. So I presented the solid scientific evidence in this report. I try my best to get word of the intelligence report, the intelligence evidence. But actually, the intelligence, what I can tell you is this is definitely purposely well planned bioweapon. The Chinese Communist Party may not understand the real character of this virus because they don't care. Like in the beginning, they didn't know this is so high contagious, but they still release it. But it doesn't matter. They know hydroxychloroquine can be a good prevention method. So the high level of the officers in China, they use this, take it as prevention. They don't let people to know it. They don't allow US people to know it. And they don't allow people to even talk about it. So all this together, you will see these are the very, very terrible things. Once we reveal it, although it's very difficult for people to understand because we're always too kind. We cannot understand the evilness. We cannot understand this bloody motives, but it do happen. And like your economic breakdown, your social order is get totally messed up. Now I see more and more people can realize, yes, it did happen.
Yeah, it's very dark to think about. It's very dark because it's a possibility that I considered already in February with a heavy heart, and it's not one that that makes me very happy because I also feel as though authorities in America, even though they might know it, are using the situation to their advantage as well. And I can't really figure out why that is, but it doesn't feel to me completely legitimate. One of the things that bothers me the most, and one of the reasons why I think you are not more well known in America than you should be, is because you entered our discussions through Steve Bannon and through Fox News. And can you, if it's possible, can you briefly explain or tell me why it ended up being that you had to go through that guy? Because if I may say so, he might have been the worst political representative for you in terms of getting you on TV in America and getting you in people's minds, because It could have been anyone. If you'd have chosen me, it would have been better because I at least had no bad reputation. But Steve Bannon, among at least half of America, as soon as you shown on the same screen as him, they just would immediately turn it off. And that's really unfortunate because, and that's why I wanted to talk to you, because I wanted to find out if there was any details about that.
Yeah, I know many of people will ask this question. So I'm always open to this question. First, as I said, this is not a political issue. COVID-19 never cares about whether you're Democracy or you're Republican or you're Chinese Communist Party member. They treat you all the same as you are a human. So this is a global health issue. The second thing is, this is an urgent global health issue. We see Chinese Communist Party as a very powerful, the second powerful regime, just second to U.S., and collaborate with all the the top scientists in this field. Although you are scientists, I'm scientist, but compared to Dr. Fauci, Dr. Tedros, and all those like the Eddie Holmes and even the Ian Lipkin, all these professors, our voice is very weak. Once they stand up using the Lancet, Nature, New England Journal of Medicine, or Science, all these people, all these journals involved, we know. So once they start talk on the journals in front of the public, people won't come to us and listen to it. They don't understand this. So this is the other way. I cannot go through the like other scientists, because we are other people, they can easily get suppressed. I tried my best to go through Mr. Luder. He is the only media I can trust at that time, because you didn't stay under control of Chinese Communist Party. You don't know how strict the surveillance and the big control is. Basically, even I type the things to my mom in WeChat. If I want to type these things, immediately it will be scanned by the phone. And government will know you are on the blacklist. If you want to get trouble, then you do the second time. You will see the trouble. And why I go to the Steve Bannon, I have to tell you that I really don't know how U.S. people comment him before. For me, I know him is because when I say during Hong Kong protest, Hong Kong people, young people, people just fight for freedom, they suffer out. And the Chinese Communist Party combined with the Hong Kong government, they show they are just the government stay there, allow people to do protests, but in secret they kill those people. They kill them and they said they are suicide. They disappeared. From the beginning, I deliver a message to Luder. The message I told him is, I won't commit suicide. Once you say I'm disappeared, please tell people that's because I deliver the message to you. And later, when I know, also back to the Mr. Steve Bannon, I know him because from the Hong Kong protest, we see the voice happened in U.S. From Mr. Mao's school, this is not about politics. We Chinese people really know the difference. Chinese Communist Party try to kidnap all the Chinese, and then at their hostage, he said, you try to fight with us, we have 1.4 billion people. Actually, the 1.4 billion people has no weapon, no speech freedom. They have to do anything government force them to do. But Mao's school is the first people, and also Mr. Steve Bannon is the first Western people who help to separate this Chinese Communist Party is not Chinese people. The concept to the world, they are the people can deliver the voice out, and also the whistleblower movement. Not only deliver this message out, also deliver the truth of Hong Kong movement. And you see back in January, Mr. Steve Bannon is the only one who delivered the message to government based on my message from Luder to make U.S. government, Mr. President Trump, to do the travel ban from China government. Although if you back to see the news at that time, all the other experts strongly opposite to this decision, but it do help U.S. people get less injury. And also, why I can't get to US. At that time, end of April, I realized US, I mean, Western country, Italy, Spain, and US, France, I see a lot of news. I see the information also, Uda and I and Marco and Mr. Benedict from the pandemic war room broadcast tried best to deliver it out. But the voice is still weak because I was in Hong Kong as a witness, and maybe the only witness inside WHO reference lab and China government. I may be the only one who can speak it clearly to the Western people, but I cannot do it in Hong Kong. Because I was already under the surveillance. And at the end of April, I got information that intelligence, so they want to make me disappear as soon as possible. I have to run away from Hong Kong to US. But image, I'm not an agent. I don't get any training or any capacity to flee away Hong Kong, although I have visa. But that belongs to China. You know the state security law, right? You know how powerful the enforcement is. I have no way to run away. And at that time, the first time I contact both Marco and Mr. Steve Bannon is just 1 week before I left Hong Kong. And after the hours of discussion, they realized this is really very useful information, and I can tell all to US people, to the Western. And then they help me go through the rule of foundation. Those money funded by anti-CCP Chinese people or foreign people who pay their even life when they donate to this foundation. You know, some of them are in the prison in China get tortured. So this foundation actually is the one who helped me to secretly leave China, leave Hong Kong. And after that, when I go to US, you know, Chinese Communist Party is a big, powerful region. I can go to find help from you, but the result is what? The next day, maybe both of you and me get car accident. And no one knows why. It looks like suicide or just accident. Who can protect me? So I really appreciate no matter how, US people comment Mr. Bannon or how Chinese government try to use propaganda to attack Mao and Mr. Bannon are not the top enemy for Chinese Communist Party because they have done too much.
Yes, I see. No, it's a wonderful explanation, and I really appreciate it because I was one of these people and that had a mixed review of Steve Bannon, and it's nice to know that there is some history there, especially with the action in Hong Kong. And I'm happy that you gave that explanation. That's really great.
Dr. Cowie, Dr.
Yes.
Yan, we are almost running out of time today, so maybe Dr. Cowie and Dr. Yan can give our audience a closing remark quickly, so we can end this show.
Yes, okay, that's very good. Do you want to go first, Dr. Yan, or would you like me to?
Okay, maybe I do a short one first. So I'm very happy that we can have such good discussion today. And as I feel it's a very joyful discussion, we really touch on a lot of topics, even very sensitive ones. And I hope there will be more chance, and even we welcome Dr. Cowie, bring your friends and bring your host, and we can share this kind of discussion, because I always believe that the truth is only one truth, only one fact, and no life can be perfect. So after discussion, after verification, our audience will understand it better. And as you asked me why I go to Fox instead of other media, what I can tell you is even Fox, the first time during my interview in June, it takes 4 hours. I was talking, they were asking, but finally only 30 minutes can be played. And it's delayed for 1 month. During that time, China embassy tried to suppress it, try their best to suppress it. And also like CNN, BBC, they want interview me, but they never give me the live interview, and I don't trust them. Like this interview, this discussion, I prefer it to be live. No matter I say right or wrong, even I made some type of made some mistake or something, it's okay. People can listen to it. There is no way for some other people to change the fact, to distract people or mislead people, like some expert in John Hopkins or like some other people in Columbia, they try to do. We just deliver the fact. People can use common sense to verify it. And I enjoy this discussion. I hope we can have more chance to talk and share our knowledge to people.
Well, I have to say, I second that. I would love to have a discussion again. I don't think I got to as much science as I wanted to. Not because I don't think that people don't understand it, but I just wanted to emphasize more parts of your paper, and so I would love an opportunity to do it again. We briefly talked about, I think we got cut a little bit there, but we briefly talked about a lot of things that I think are really interesting, and I would be happy at any time to talk to you again. So please, let's stay in touch. And we did not get Dr. Kang to talk very often, which I would also like to include in this discussion next time.
Right aside, right, Doctor? Maybe you can give a good summary too.
No, yeah, I'm very happy listening. Literally, I was really enjoying your conversation. I love this format, like Dr. Yan commented, right? So the live discussion, nothing's being hidden, right? The reports are out there, the science is out there, it's for everybody to judge, right? So when you, whatever perspective you're coming from, show the evidence, right? So the live discussion is the best way of really revealing what is solid. I think, unfortunately, I think today probably Dr. Koi had a lot more scientific questions prepared that we didn't get to touch. But I would love to, us having this conversation again, right? And
Yes.
just, discussing two more details of things. But I loved listening to all that. I would be happy to be audience again the next time. But if I can have to participate, I would be happy to. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, then we're going to do that very shortly. I promise you.
Okay. Let's thank Dr. Yan, Dr. Kawi, Dr. Kang for today's show. And our take-home message is that the truth about COVID-19 is a global health issue, and we have to find out the truth. And we welcome all the scientists to have live discussion with Dr. Yan, with us on our program. And thank you for watching again. Thank you, and that will conclude today's show, and we hope to see you in future. Bye.
Bye.
Just going to wait for